Hello everybody, this is Opal Unicorn. I wanted to read an excerpt from my book, A World Within a World. I decided to share with you the chapter of the birds, the world of the birds, and it's inspired by my true story. And I wanted to first read you an excerpt from that, and I also wanted to tell you the actual story that inspired it and what it means to me. So here's the excerpt on page 27. I could sense this other world, a world that seemed to be encased with mine, a world within a world, like those Russian stacking dolls. As much as I tried to fit into my own world, I just couldn't. I didn't belong there. I belonged somewhere else, somewhere filled with sunshine, light, beautiful creatures, and unicorns, a place filled with love. I felt so strongly, you see, that I cried out to be answered by anything that could possibly explain the magic that lived in everything in my world. An invisible doorway to that essence, which I now lingered itself elsewhere. I was just hoping someone could answer me. If there could be some truth to there being something more to this other world than the world I knew. And that's when you three came. Honestly, I was expecting the fairies that lived in the village I made in my backyard to come. I had no idea why you responded to me in the garden. This is way beyond what I thought would happen. I mean, no offense, but I didn't even know where I was anymore and what it all meant. You answered my call, but not my question, actually leaving me more in its wake. Who are you? Am I supposed to have the answers and not the questions? Besides, I'm just a kid from a clueless world. They stared at me again, only the sound of the wind passing between us. The horned owl finally spoke. You have made contact, and there's no going back. You must see the Moth Queen now and get the answers you're looking for. You pierced through the gates, Sonny, and you've crossed the bridge between the worlds. And now you're one of us, a traveler of the worlds. And so this is the story that really happened. And it's my autobiographical story. I would finally pray one day in the garden facing the great pine trees out in the mountains where I lived. I sang a song and cried, and I prayed to the universe that if there was no such thing as magic, that I didn't want to live anymore. Because this world was too sad for me to live in, and that there was too much injustice, too much killing. And the animals were being killed and eaten, and I could bear it no longer. So I asked the universe at that moment, and I prayed, and I sang, and I cried, that I would die if it didn't get an answer. And miraculously, I did. One day, while I was crying and singing alone, looking out into the mountains and the pine trees where we lived, a blue jay flew out from the sky and perched itself on the branch of the pine tree and just stared back at me. I watched his black beady eyes for a moment, and he stared hypnotically back at mine, staying there, while then swooping in from the sky came a great horned golden owl and perched himself right next to the blue jay. His golden piercing large eyes, pools of fearful knowing, stared back at me, eyes penetrating my soul. And if this wasn't enough, from the twilight between the day and the night, the lavender sky, came the white barn owl, flying down and perching herself next to the horned owl. Her large black pools of vortex eyes just stared at me. And they all three watched me, and I watched them. And this we did for a while. And I knew them, and they knew me, and we memorized each other. And I promised to never forget that we had formed our own coven one twilight night in the darkest night of a child's little soul, to remind her that there were those who would listen. And perhaps it wasn't who we would one think it would be, but that there would always be more up there in the air of flight, from the perch of a cosmic bird, than anything a human might fight for truth in. I was heard by the bird people, and that is what I believe, for now I know that was the day that I believed in the birds. In this part of the story, the bird people tell the main character to go to the moth queen, where she will be able to give them more answers. And the moth queen is my version of the priestess. But back to the story of the birds. The birds answered me, and they were not unicorns, they were not fairies, there are no magical beings, but they were of nature, and they are ruled by the wind and air, which are messengers. And they fly up high, and they see things from a perspective that we here on the earth can't see. And the message of the birds to me was to be able to see from the higher perspective. And that is my feeling of what the message was for me. Thank you so much for listening. This is Opal Unicorn.